Yeah, so Newcastle have, as we've talked about, really keen on signing a defensive midfielder, and it's my understanding that they have been very keen on a player called Amadou Haidara for the pretty much over a year now. They tried to get him last summer from Leipzig. 25-year-old African midfielder, very highly rated, very close to joining Brighton in January. And Newcastle certainly think he ticks a lot of boxes. Leipzig pretty much resigned to losing him this summer. I think there'll be a very big bidding war for it. But yeah, it's my understanding that Newcastle are still, very keen to make him a player this summer.
Why do they like him so much? What boxes is he ticking, do you think?
He did a very interesting interview, a couple of months ago, saying that he tries to mould his game on Yaya Toure and Casemiro, and you're probably not going to get a player as good as that at the moment, but I think you're certainly getting a player of that mould, someone who, absolutely dominates the defence of that midfield. Very good security in front of the back four. And look, he's had suitors across Europe, Liverpool, Manchester United, clubs in Spain have already tried and failed to get him away from Leipzig. So he certainly, as I said, ticks a lot of boxes, and I think he'd be a very popular deal if it got done.
And in terms of a price tag, have we got any idea of how much of the budget you would take up?
It looks like Leipzig, rejected a deal for about 40 million in January, but that was because they thought they could, catch Bayern in the Bundesliga. Their stance might soften a bit in the summer, but as I said, a bit more could also drive that price up. I think you'd probably be looking at, for a player of his age and quality, 40, 50 million, which is certainly in their budget. So I don't think it would break the bank.
And I suppose this is where Newcastle's approach, and obviously they're not the only one doing it, but of having scouts who are scouring all the leagues in Europe and South America and finding them players who maybe aren't yet on the radar of the Man Cities or the Arsenals, but will do a level of trying to get you into the top four. This is where it pays dividend.
It's straight out the Dan Ashworth playbook. You just got to look at what he did at Brighton. They signed players from absolute obscurity in Belgium and Serbia and Japan, and you look at them now and they're going for 40, 50 million to Arsenal. Matoma, if he goes in the summer, is going to a lot of money. So Ashworth's made no secret about them wanting to find these young gems from countries where they're maybe not in the public eye too much. We've already seen them set up, scouting networks in South America with, trying to find the next Brazilian stars. And the club have put out a lot of job adverts recently to try and get scouts across pretty much every country in Europe, to make sure they're across pretty much every league.
The other names mentioned now, over the weekend, Ivan Toney mentioned, James Maddison again. The same names seem to be popping up, and it goes back to the relative understanding that Newcastle have an A list, they have a B list, and it's not necessarily the longest list in the world. It's a list of players that if they don't get the one at the top, they'll get the one on third, fourth, but it's still a very short list of players they've looked at, scouted, they know what they're like on and off the field, they know what they want, and they're hoping of getting someone on that list.
Yeah, we've seen it plenty of times already. We've seen it with Botman, we've seen it with Isak, even Haidara, as I said, was a player that they really wanted last summer, and they're not afraid to go back in for him later. They know what they want, and they aren't, put off if they're rejected once. And yeah, it's just good to see that, that they're still keeping on these targets even when they miss out on them the first time round.